Hello and welcome to Media7. I'm Russell Brown. Democratic governments want to make good decisions, and at the base of such decision-making should be the use of high-quality information and evidence, both in developing new policies and in evaluating current policies. So says the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor, Sir Peter Gluckman, in a new discussion paper titled Towards Better Use of Evidence in Policy Formation. But when evidence meets entrenched political reality, politics wins 9 times out of 10. That's not evidence, of course, just something I made up to illustrate a point. This week, we'll be examining that theme across 2 policy minefields, drug law and the environment. Sam Mulgrew gets us rolling with the source.
35 years on from the Misuse of Drugs Act 1975, police spent over $90 million fighting drugs. And 4 out of 5 drug arrests are cannabis-related. More than 16% of us, or about 3.5 times the population of Wellington City, used illegal drugs in the past year, risking a possible prison sentence. Half of us have dabbled at least once. A 2008 study found that of those who stopped smoking weed, only 8% quit for fear of arrest. 36% quit because they simply didn't like it. That's pretty unusual though. Pot is New Zealand's 3rd favourite drug, and 50,000 of us are everyday smokers. A longitudinal study of 1,200 21-year-olds in Christchurch found 70% of them had tried grass. 5% had been arrested for a cannabis-related offence, but just 5% of the 5% caught actually reduced their cannabis consumption following arrest. Analyses found 21-year-olds dependent on Wacky Backy were 2.3 times more likely to show signs of psychosis than people not dependent on the drug. 18 months ago, the chairman of the British Advisory Council on Drugs, David Nutt, and his colleagues compiled a list of drugs in order of personal harm. Heroin came in trumps, with alcohol embarrassingly placed at 5th position, more harmful than ketamine, the horse tranquilizer. Murderous cigarettes placed 9th, and cannabis was 11th.
And that's the kind of evidence that has been taken into account in the Law Commission's new review of the Misuse of Drugs Act 1975. Turns out we're not the only ones having the discussion it aims to provoke. It is time, declared Britain's Observer newspaper last Sunday, to rip up the Misuse of Drugs Act and start again. The paper was endorsing a new report by the UK Drug Policy Commission, which declares that even the idea of being soft or hard on drugs is now redundant.
But the government has dismissed the report. A Home Office spokesperson said, "We believe the Misuse of Drugs Act works and continues to protect the public from the serious harms caused by illicit drug use."
Talk about drug reform has burgeoned in the British media. Renowned documentarian Angus McQueen presented Our Drugs War.
I follow our drugs war to Afghanistan, where the huge sums of Western money being spent are actually fueling the birth of a new narco-state.
And there's plenty more where that came from.
In my job as a psychologist, I deal with addiction. I work with people with heroin and crack cocaine dependence. But by comparison, for cannabis, it seems to me the effects are like a walk in the park. And yet this is the one drug that's rarely out of the public eye and shrouded in controversy.
In New Zealand, we have Drug Bust, the war on drugs as primetime entertainment.
Welcome to the largest police district in the country, Counties Manukau, as they battle the billion-dollar drug trade. This is their story.
Welcome to New Zealand's war on drugs.
And tens of thousands of school kids see the Montana meth videos, even though many experts fear their horror show style is actually counterproductive.
Look, I'm just gonna shoot up just once. All right, I'm not gonna be like that guy. I'm not gonna be like that guy.
But the country's newspapers did take up the debate on the Law Commission's new review of our own Misuse of Drugs Act, which comes to some of the same conclusions as the British study.
The government must stick to its guns. If anything, drug laws should be tightened.
Hopefully the drug reforms will be able to be installed and enforced so they can make a real difference.
TV covered the review too.
A Law Commission report out this week says the sale of products like chronic is completely unregulated, creating an unacceptable level of risk to the public. The Commission recommends that synthetic products should be tested by a new drug regulator.
And J-Day provided the news with colour and context.
We don't like everything in the report, but there's so much stuff here that has been done by an independent, an official government body, which really needs the public's attention.
But if the establishment media are engaging, there is one group of people who approach the topic of drug reform with all the enthusiasm they might show for a shoebox full of excrement. For MPs, it is political poison.
When we had Nandor Tanshos in Parliament, there was a big focus on the cannabis issue. Your existing policy on that is still to introduce a legal age limit of 18 for personal cannabis use. Is that going to remain the position for the Green Party?
The emphasis actually on our cannabis policy has been towards a decriminalisation model.
So you still think 18-year-olds should be able to smoke cannabis legally?
We've gone towards decriminalisation like they have in South Australia and the ACT.
Let's not be cute about this, because your policy says introduce a legal age limit of 18 for personal cannabis use. So should 18-year-olds be able to smoke cannabis?
I think that the criminalisation of cannabis users
should they be able to smoke cannabis, Dr. Norman?
Is not helping anybody. So,
and if the co-leader of the Green Party doesn't want to talk about it, what price the rest of them? I'm joined now by the Executive Director of the New Zealand Drug Foundation, Ross Bell, and the Drug Policy Program Director at Mexican NGO Espolea, Aaron Barra. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. Ross, the Drug Foundation officially says it is dedicated to evidence-based alcohol and other drug policy. Sounds good. What's it actually mean?
Evidence-based policy is our best protection against dogma, and there is so much of that in the drug policy world. What it means is simply we do our work based on the best information, whether that's gathered from peer-reviewed journals, randomised controlled trials, or talking with our colleagues around the world about their experiences. It informs people providing drug information, honest information. It can inform the police in the work that they do, and it can inform treatment providers with their clinical best practice. So it's really using the best information to do the best job that we can.
So it's about science rather than morality?
Well, I think we also have to admit and acknowledge that science isn't going to drive all of our policy. There is always going to be an element of recognising the community concern and the political reality. So, no, science 100% isn't going to form drug policy, but it should certainly inform policy more than it does.
Do you think the Law Commission has taken that approach? Have they done a good job in your view?
This is a 4-year review. It's a comprehensive review, 144 recommendations. They talked to colleagues around the world. They went into prisons and talked to people in the drug treatment units in prisons. They went along to residential services. They talked to a range of people, got a lot of experience, evidence, advice. I think the report is probably one of the best analysis of drug policy that I've seen in my work. I think it's very good. There's a few elements that we may not agree with, but overall the analysis is actually very clear.
What are the key facets for you?
Well, I think importantly around the legal high industry, that the Law Commission have recommended a new approach to there. I think the important thing there is that they haven't recommended prohibition. Prohibition is a last resort. They've said, for these substances we need to have a new regime where there are some tight regulations over them. I think that's an important thing because the government of the day is quite concerned about that. They have recommended continuance of the tough approach, the criminal justice approach.
Yeah, they haven't recommended decriminalisation or legalisation of anything that's currently illegal.
They have not. They weren't allowed to because the terms of reference didn't let them, but they haven't anyway, and I think they lay out arguments why they wouldn't want to recommend that anyway. But importantly, around lower level offending, possession and use of drugs, small scale social dealing, they have listened to the evidence and they're simply saying let's do what Australia has been doing since 1999.
Aram, you're our visitor here. What is your work? What do you do?
Well, as you mentioned, I work for Espolea, a youth-led Mexican-based NGO. But I also sit at the board of Youth Rise, which is an international network of young people. And both institutions at their own level, they work on advocating for harm reduction, life-saving, accessible services for young people, and for, in essence, achieving a drug policy reform worldwide.
Is the philosophy of your organisation that young people are going to take drugs and the important thing is to prevent them being harmed?
Well, more than the philosophy, it's the reality. Young people do take drugs, and we need to tackle with that reality. As
a media show, we were pretty interested in what happens with the media around these issues in Mexico. I looked it up. I was quite shocked to find that more than 50 journalists have been killed or are missing. I get the impression that both the government leans on newspapers and the drug cartels do too. Are journalists being caught in the middle here?
I think you can put it in terms of human lives, which is of course very important, but I would put it in terms of freedom of expression and freedom of opinion and freedom of press. Of course, you're seeing a lot of journalists being caught in the middle because they're exposing a lot of information that either the cartels or the government don't want to be put out there. And in that sense, it's completely off topic. But we really need, if Mexico is going to reform its drug policy, if Mexico is going to do anything in terms of its own development, we need to really look very seriously at democratizing our media, mass media and community media, and at changing that, providing the security so that reporters, journalists, and broadcasters can do their job.
I suppose the other shocking thing there is that about half of those journalists appear to have been killed by government agents. It sounds like a very dangerous place to be reporting. Ross, we saw Phil Saxby from Normal endorse the review there. I wonder whether you think there's some sense in which it's counterproductive to have Normal get behind a report. Does it scare the horses in Parliament?
I have had conversations with colleagues in Normal, and I think the drug debate is a sensitive one. And politicians, I think you've seen some of the political responses, they are very cautious. I have had these conversations with Normal. I do not think the J-Day protests are helpful to advancing the debate. Whether Normal's endorsement of the report, I was actually hoping Normal would say that there are things missing in that report. I think Normal have a legitimate voice, and I think they could have had a stronger voice. Describing it as their Bible for drug reform. It's my Bible for drug reform. I think there's some really good things in there, and it's going to be a very sensitive process to try to advance this in the political environment that we've got.
As you said earlier, it hasn't been dismissed out of hand the way Simon Power dismissed the discussion document that led to this review. Why do you think that is? Why has there been that change?
The day after Simon Power dismissed the first report, the editors of the Herald and the Dominion slapped him down in very strongly worded editorials, so I think they were cautious. I don't think you can dismiss a report that's taken 4 years and that length of expertise that has gone into it. I think the government is dealing with some issues that report picks up, especially around the legal products. And I think the important thing is that the minister that fronted this was an associate health minister. It was Peter Dunn, who is the drug policy minister, and that is a health portfolio. The Law Commission have recommended the current law be scrapped and be replaced with a law administered by the Ministry of Health. I'm hoping that there's some optimism in there that it's the health people, not the justice folks, that are going to run with this.
The UK Drug Policy Commission report that we mentioned earlier on has been welcomed there by senior police officers. That hasn't happened here. Both senior police officers and Greg O'Connor of the Police Association have objected to it, and in particular to the warning system. I mean, why have they done that? Surely it makes their job easier.
I think it's disappointing because the police that we talk to love cautioning schemes that can divert people away from them having to do a lot of work. Frontline police officers are sick of seeing the same people time and time again. If people have a health problem, if they have an addiction, cops want to see them get help. A cautioning scheme provides that. It also doesn't tie up. It means that police resources don't get tied up so that they can get on, do the real work. I think it was irresponsible for the association to pour cold water on that cautioning scheme when it is a scheme that the cops currently use. For cannabis offences. There is now a new nationwide scheme, and they've been running the adult diversion scheme for a long time. They are used to running diversion schemes like this, and these schemes are copied off Australia, who have been doing it for over 10 years. And in Australia, all Australian states have these things, and they work really well.
I just want to conclude now by talking to both of you about where your respective common ground is. What's the goal? Is anyone in the world getting drug policy right? What's the goal here? How should it be done?
I think the main point, and the very basic that we should set for is the respect of human rights, regardless of if I'm a drug user or whatever I am. I should be entitled to have a good life and to be respected as a human being, and I think that's the bottom line, regardless of where we want to go. legalization, not legalization, whatever type of reform you're looking at, or legal, you know, what type of services are available as well, what type of options I have as, in particular, as a young person out there, whether I'm a drug user or not, you know, just as a young person in general, do I have employment, educational, schooling options, health facilities, and yeah.
Ross, that's not something you hear a lot in the media. Drug users have human rights too, right. But is that a key?
Well, I think it is, and I think one of the issues around this debate and where the media have a key role is not only do media at the moment make it difficult to have a mature conversation about drug policy, but I think they create an environment where that reinforces the stigma against people who use drugs and acts as a real barrier to people who need help getting help. So I think that the media need to look at their role in maybe shifting the focus of how they do their reporting, get a little bit maturer about this. This is not a black and white issue. We think fundamentally this is a health issue, and start looking at it through a health lens.
Ross Bell and Aaron Barra, thank you for your time. And I might add, although we don't have time to discuss it, on Drug Bust this week, 2 enormous bags of pills were seized by police, taken away, tested, and none of it turned out to be illegal. I think it's a little hard to argue the act's working when that happens. Thank you.